Okay, so I just got back from the ironing board from kind of giving my cuff a good press as well as pressing my seam allowance open on my the inside of my sleeve. So what we first need to do is we need to kind of go in and reopen, or just like open this up, so that we can align this edge and connect our right sides together, matching up our notches along this bottom edge where the placket is open. So again, this is, let me see if I can get my hand in here. We need to treat this like a sleeve, okay? And so the bottom of this placket opening, this is going to be around our wrist. And then we're going to attach our cuff to the bottom of our sleeve in this manner, and then it will fold back up towards the top of the sleeve. Now again, we're only doing like this kind of like shortened half forearm sleeve, so our cuff seems massive right now, but you know, if we were going to attach this to a full length sleeve, it would probably be okay. So what we need to do, I can get my hand out, so we first want to turn that sleeve right side out, and we need to attach the open edge of our sleeve with right sides together. So what we're going to be attaching is we're attaching the non-interfaced side of our cuff along the bottom edge of our sleeve. So what we want to do is we want to kind of line up these open edges, or these seams here along the end, the seam of where the placket opens, that triangle placket opens, and the seam of the like the side seam of the cuff. And again, we're only going to be pinning and seaming the bottom edge, so only one layer of fabric this time around. So I'm going to go ahead and put some pins in. I think I might need some new pins if that's kind of hard to push through. And I kind of want to like open that cuff up to make sure that that seam is really going to line up with and match up with the seam of my placket opening. So as I have that there, then I'm just going to kind of hold both pieces up in the air and match up those raw edges and put pins all the way around. And since this is a fairly small, like wrist circumference, what you might want to do, and hopefully you can see that I'm, you know, just working that edge all the way around here. You might need to put in quite a few pins. We don't really want to stretch it a whole lot, but if one of your pieces is slightly bigger, you can put in a row of like basting and just gather that in. Let's see. Looks like my sleeve might be a little bit bigger, just like to kind of eyeball it around. So that's what I'm going to have to do. You're probably going to run into a similar situation. So what I'm going to do is I am going to open my cuff up, and I'm going to lengthen my stitch to be 4. Make sure that I have a decent tail length here, and I'm just going to put a row of basting stitches a half an inch along this edge between my seams. So I'm going to run that raw edge along the half-inch marking, and I'm not going to do back stitching because I'm going to need to gather those. And I'm doing this along a half inch because we will create that seam at 5/8. Alright, and when I raise it up, I want to give myself some thread tails to hang on to. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and repin with right sides together, matching up. I'm starting on one end and working my way around, just matching up those seam lines, and then I'm just going to match up the raw edges for maybe about an inch or so, and then I'm going to wrap the cuff all the way around, and then I'm going to need to kind of gather with those that row of ease stitching, or that row of basting. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to wrap this the sleeve placket all the way around, line up those seams and put a pin in there, and then I'm going to pin back towards the center of the unpinned cuff. And I'm going to make sure that that seam allowance on my sleeve is going to stay flat when I go to stitch this here in a moment. Alright, so what I have is I have pins at, when my placket is all the way open, I have pins attaching my cuff just about maybe an inch to an inch and a half inward, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently pull on either my top or my bobbin thread, whichever one you want to do, just to gather that space up on your cuff. So I'm going to pull on my my red threads and just kind of gather that up a bit so everything will fit along that cuff line. And I don't think it's going to take a whole lot, but it's going to take a little bit there, just to make sure everything will fit. Let's see, it looks like I need a little bit more. Just gathering. And then once I gather, I want to come in, and things are tight here, but I want to use my fingers and my thumb and just kind of distribute that fullness along the edge of the cuff opening. Alright, and just trying to evenly distribute that now. Alright, and it looks like things are matching up pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give it a little bit of pull at both ends to try to get that to want to set, line up and set in there fairly even, and then I'm going to come back in and put quite a few pins in there just to hold kind of all those small gathers in place. Alright, and again I'm just matching up that raw edge there. Alright, and I'm easing those gathers kind of over, trying to evenly distribute them. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, from the inside of the cuff, I'm going to start at the seam line, so where this stitch is at, and I'm going to create a seam stitching through just the non-interface side of the cuff and attach that to the bottom edge of the sleeve. And I'm going to stitch that at 5/8 of an inch so that my gathering stitches don't show. So I'm going to make sure that my raw edges are along 5/8, and I'm going to lower that needle into that seam line and just very slowly do a back tack, making sure that I don't go too far back. And I'm just going to slowly go along this seam, making sure that my raw edges stay right at 5/8. And I just noticed that I'm at 4 for my stitch length. I'm like, man, this is going really fast. Make sure that you take that stitch length back down. I'm going to have to come back and re-stitch that just to make sure nothing gets pulled out. Yeah, I was like, man, my feed dogs are moving real fast. I would have saw that a little sooner, but it is what it is. Alright, and then when I approach this, the far edge of my pins, or where all my pins are marked, I want to again, oh man, I think some of my fabric got crisscrossed underneath. Oh goodness, no good. Oh, I think it's just the way that my facing was being held. So, oh, that's what it is. I guess it's not that major. I'll just do some overlapping stitches to kind of get that back in the game. So I was worried that I had some fabric that was folding, and I was just seeing this sleeve kind of pulling in a different direction. So I'm just going to come back in and just finish up that stitch line. And if you need to, maybe try to fold that inside out. Maybe it won't. If it's giving you some bulk, that might be a quick fix too. Let me make sure I just got my threads in there correctly. I'm going to come back in here and just do some overlapping stitches for about 4 stitches or so, maybe 4 or 5 stitches, and then finish up that stitch line. And I'm going to go all the way to the stitching that I can see for my seam there and do some back tacking to finish that up. Alright, and I can trim those thread tails, and what I need to do is I need to go back and go over that basting stitch that I had originally started off with, but I'm going to go ahead and pull these seams out so you can kind of see what's happening here. Alright, so as you go ahead to turn that seam around, what we have is we have this very full cuff that is now along the bottom of our sleeve that we can then fold back, and everything will be kind of flipped up almost. It's very full, and it just gives a different look than some of our other cuffs. But I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so I can fix my basting stitch that I put in, and then I'll start it back up. And I'm just going to trim all my thread tails, so I would go ahead and trim yours as well. And then what we can also do is we're going to want to come back in and trim this seam allowance down because it's quite long and bulky. So if you want to go ahead and do that, we'll be back in a moment.